Now, I've been thinking a bit more about what Baz said about pistol crossbows being useless. I'm starting to agree with him quite a bit more now. I've sort of been thinking about it. And I tested the pistol crossbows earlier and was seeing, what sort of ranges you could use them at. And what I begin to notice is a lot of the flaws with it. Now, I think the big problem pistol crossbows have is that essentially they have enough power to shoot little darts quite far, the small bolts. But the problem is the small bolts don't weigh very much, so they become very inaccurate outside of 10 yards. And if you put a bigger bolt in, like the aluminium bolt from a full-size crossbow in there, it can shoot actually quite accurately, but the problem is then it doesn't have enough power to propel it far enough, so it arcs very quickly and starts going down, so you'd have to volley it to actually get it to go into a target at a decent range. So the problem is that the pistol crossbow, unless you get a very lucky shot, isn't accurate enough or powerful enough to exceed sort of 10 to 12 yards. Another problem is you could probably get a bit more accuracy out of them if you had a stock on them, but then the issue is you're making the pistol crossbow, which should be compact, bigger, and then you have to get to the point where you think, I'm making the pistol crossbow bigger, so what's the advantages it has over a big crossbow? And if you think, if you then put a decent sized rifle stock on that little pistol crossbow, he's not going to really... Let's just pull this out a bit to the problem is I'm going to have to cock it, so I won't do that, but just for example, let's say that metal bit's deployed out, so it's roughly the same length as there. This will be a bit more forwards. You think you're only getting something that's really half the size of a full-size crossbow then, at least lengthways, but doesn't have the power. So it's going to be hard to carry about, sort of lengthwise, and it doesn't have any power advantage over the big crossbow. Also, the little small ones aren't what would I call as safe. I mean, crossbows by design aren't as safe as firearms when loaded, because the crossbow safety essentially is just designed to lock the string in place, and if the string comes out for whatever reason, the crossbow will fire on its own. But I think the big crossbows, at least, the safety seems to work better, where with these little crossbows I've noticed that you can nudge them easily and that could set them off because they're held in much more via friction rather than a basic locking mechanism. And the problem with the pistol crossbow is, unless you, I think, put some sort of magazine on it, and I've seen videos where people have done that and they're quite cool, unless you go to the lengths where you put a magazine on it and everything, and you have sort of a repeater mechanism on it, they're not going to be good enough to get more than one shot off, quickly at close range. And I did a video where I timed myself shooting it, and to be honest, I think for an extra second or so of shooting I could have probably cocked the air rifle and got that ready to fire at the same time. And the air rifle in a lot of ways has more advantages over the pistol crossbow. Sure, it's a bit bigger, but a 2.2 pellet can actually kill something up, like kill small game up to 50 yards. And ignoring the illegality of using a pistol crossbow for hunting, the bolt is going to have nowhere near the accuracy to do that at that range. Now, as for the big crossbow, you've got much longer range on it. The bolts are a lot more accurate because they're heavier, so they're less affected by wind and everything. And I've put the arrow there to demonstrate this again. If you haven't seen those other videos, I recommend you watch them. I've tested those big arrows on the crossbow and they work fine up until at least 20 yards. I mean, sadly I don't have anywhere to fire it where I can legally fire it to test ranges beyond 20 yards, but those arrows seem to work well as well. So the big crossbow at least has the advantage where you can use lots of different bolt or arrow lengths with it and they will fire fine. And at longer ranges you might notice more of a drop on some of them or whatever, or other accuracy differences. I mean, obviously the bigger crossbow has a disadvantage, it's harder to cock, but I mean, if you got a £120 model and practiced with it enough, I'm sure you'd be able to cock it well enough. I mean, I can cock the £150 one at least probably 10 times before it becomes a bit of a chore to do it, and I've definitely not got a huge burly frame or anything, so people who are built bigger won't have anywhere near that sort of problem I do with it, and then you can get cocking aids for it as well. So although it's slower to cock the big one, at least it's got much more of a payoff if you shoot it. and let's say, for example, that guy over there jumped out at you, zombie mannequin East German soldier, what do you think's going to do much damage to it? A pistol crossbow bolt sort of going at it, or a big crossbow bolt going at it? I know that's a bad sort of example, but at least the full-size crossbow bolt's travelling faster, it's a lot heavier, it's a lot bigger, you know, it's going to have more of an effect. So that's the point really to this, is that once you start actually looking at the advantages the pistol crossbow initially seems to have, they don't really come off as being advantages anymore. Now, I'm not saying I don't like pistol crossbows, because I enjoy actually having a bit of fun, you know, shooting it and everything, but I think for a survival type situation they probably don't, the more I think about it, have any advantages over the big crossbow. So if you haven't already seen it, I definitely recommend you watch the Baz Feller's video where he talks about pistol crossbows and why he doesn't think they're very good. And another issue I think of the pistol crossbow is that despite the supposed power being quite high, like that's meant to be a £50 one, you can get the £80 ones, and we've already said that they probably aren't the powers they're advertised as. I reckon at say 30 yards, if you were to fire a £25, £30 recurve actual archery bow, I reckon you'd get a lot better penetration and accuracy with that than you would with a little pistol crossbow, even though in theory it's a lower draw weight. So I imagine the problem with a little crossbow like that is it loses the draw weight faster, where with that it would keep the power for ages. But yeah, well, I probably could think of more things to say, but I can't off the top of my head. But yeah, I think Baz is completely right here. The pistol crossbows really don't have that many advantages when you look at them over everything compared to the big crossbows. You know, no, I'd definitely much rather have a big crossbow if my life depended on it, because I know for a fact that a 14-inch bolt, which weighs a fair bit, coming out of one of those, if that hits something charging at you, it is going to stop it, where that pistol crossbow, I think, would struggle there. I think for under 10 yards or whatever the range that's good at, I'd much rather just use my machete, to be honest, if something was charging at me. Well, thanks for watching.